Hashtag fake HOA property rights and homeowner justice. But here's the thing about peace. Sometimes you have to fight for it. My name is Lucas Harper, and this is the story of how a quiet town, a stubborn man, and one ridiculous pool sparked a war no one saw coming and changed everything. What if someone forged legal documents and tried to steal your backyard? That's exactly what happened to Lucas Harper, a quiet homeowner in rural Colorado, when a fake HOA showed up, claiming he now belonged to their association. They brought threats, fake fines, forged paperwork, and even surveillance. But instead of giving in, Lucas fought back. What started as a dispute over a swimming pool exploded into a legal battle that exposed a statewide scam, mobilized a divided community, and changed property law forever. Subscribe now and turn notifications on to catch more stories that matter. 2. Thiet Tag. Fake HOA, homeowners' rights, property dispute, legal battle story, HOA scam, stand up to HOA, backyard battle, real estate fraud, true story, HOA, community versus HOA, HOA abuse of power, legal homeowner rights, exposed fake, HOA, HOA gone wrong, property takeover scam, real-life drama, fight for your land, HOA corruption, neighborhood conflict, justice story. They forged legal papers to take my land. So I fought back and exposed their entire operation. You never think it'll happen to you. One day you're sipping coffee on your porch, watching your kid chase chickens through the backyard. The next, you're being told that your home, your land isn't really yours anymore. All because someone with a clipboard and a fake badge says so. They come with paperwork, with polished smiles and quiet threats. And suddenly, everything you thought was safe feels like it's slipping out from under you. But here's the thing about peace. Sometimes you have to fight for it. My name is Lucas Harper, and this is the story of how a quiet town, a stubborn man, and one ridiculous pool sparked a war no one saw coming and changed everything. Within 48 hours, a judge issued a temporary restraining order against Evergreen Lakes Civic Authority, forbidding them from setting foot on Ethan's property. But Layla wasn't done. If they forged this, they've forged others. This isn't about your pool anymore. She leaned back, arms crossed. This is a land grab disguised as civic duty, and it's time we blow it open. Ethan never considered himself a leader. He fought fires, not crowds. Ethan looked up from pruning the rosemary by his porch to see a silver SUV parked outside his gate. Two men in navy polos stepped out. Embroidered over their chests were the words, Evergreen Lakes Civic Authority. They approached with clipboards and smiles too polished to be real. "Good morning, sir," one of them said, flashing a badge that looked like it had been made on a home printer. "We're here on behalf of the Evergreen HOA, routine inspection. We're assessing shared community resources, including private recreational spaces like yours." Ethan stood up slowly, his boots crunching against the gravel. "This isn't a shared anything," he said. "And there's no HOA here." They exchanged glances. The taller one leaned in, voice cooler. "Actually, Crestwood Pines was recently annexed under our jurisdiction. It's part of an administrative expansion. You should have received a letter." "I didn't," Ethan said flatly. "And even if I had, the answer would be the same." He stepped closer to the gate. "You're not setting foot on my property." The men didn't argue. They gave a nod, turned back toward their SUV, and drove off. But as the dust settled, Ethan felt it deep in his gut. That wasn't a visit. It was a warning. Ethan wasn't a man who liked lawyers. In his experience, they talked a lot and did very little. But this wasn't just about property lines anymore. It was about something rotten that had crept into his town. Her name was Layla Grant. Young, sharp, relentless. A civil rights attorney with a chip on her shoulder and a history of taking down corrupt homeowners associations. She had a reputation for not backing down, especially when someone tried to intimidate the underdog. "I looked into Evergreen Lakes," she said, flipping through a folder of documents in Ethan's kitchen. They don't legally exist, not as a municipal authority, not as a registered HOA. They're a ghost with a website and a shiny logo. Ethan frowned. Then how the hell did they get this far? Layla slid a document across the table, an official-looking land survey, with Ethan's property shaded in pink, stamped, signed, dated. Because someone made it look real. Her finger tapped the notary seal. This isn't a valid seal. It's based on an older Colorado format phased out 5 years ago. Whoever signed this, R.D. Collier, retired from the county assessor's office 6 years ago. But he still has contacts. People who can whisper things into the right inboxes and bury records where no one will look. Ethan stared at the paper. So, I'm not just dealing with HOA bullies. I'm dealing with fraud. Layla nodded. And possibly conspiracy to defraud a landowner, which means we can fight back. They filed a motion for an emergency injunction at the county courthouse. Within 48 hours, a judge issued a temporary restraining order against Evergreen Lakes Civic Authority, forbidding them from setting foot on Ethan's property. But Layla wasn't done. If they forged this, they've forged others. This isn't about your pool anymore. She leaned back, arms crossed. This is a land grab disguised as civic duty, and it's time we blow it open. Ethan never considered himself a leader. He fought fires, not crowds. But when you're the only one standing between corruption and your neighborhood, you either raise your voice or you get drowned out. So he raised his voice. It started small. A printed flyer taped to the community mailbox. HOA or hustlers. Come find out, my backyard, Saturday at 6 p.m. People came, some curious, some skeptical, some angry mostly about their own strange letters, threats of fines, or demands for access to their private amenities. Ethan wasn't the only one targeted. He was just the first to push back. By the second gathering, the group had a name: Crestwood Voices. They weren't activists. They were librarians, nurses, mechanics, and retirees, people who just wanted to live in peace. Ethan shared what Layla had uncovered: the fake documents, the forged notary seal, the ties to retired county staff. Gasps filled the backyard. One neighbor, Maria Nguyen, wiped a tear. They tried to fine me $400 for painting my fence non-compliant beige. The silence was heavier than usual. This is bigger than me, he said softly, and maybe too big to fight. Layla sat beside him. You said that once, remember, when we filed the injunction? But look how far we've come. He looked at her, hollow-eyed. Yeah, but what if it's not far enough? Ethan didn't hear the knock at first. He was too deep in his own silence, replaying every word from the smear campaign in his mind, like static he couldn't switch off. Then another knock, firmer. Not just Crestwood residents, but people from nearby areas. Some quietly worried the same thing was creeping into their neighborhoods. But not everyone was on their side. A few residents, wooed by Evergreen's promises of higher property values and planned development, began pushing back. HOA loyalists handed out slick brochures at the post office. They accused Crestwood Voices of disrupting unity and spreading paranoia. Still, the tide was shifting. For the first time in months, Ethan didn't feel alone. At one gathering, as the sun dipped below the pines and kids splashed in his pool, an elderly neighbor leaned in and said, I never thought someone would fight for this place, but I think you're waking us all up. Ethan didn't answer. He just smiled and handed her a grilled hot dog. When Ethan logged onto his email that morning, his inbox had exploded. Subject lines screamed, Concerned resident feedback. Why are you endangering us? Shame on you, Ethan Blake. Attached were links to articles, forums, even a sleek, well-designed website, stoppoolprivilege.org. The site featured drone footage of Ethan's backyard, darkened and edited to look ominous. Headlines labeled him as a man hoarding a community resource, unstable, uncooperative. One section accused him of creating a safety hazard for children by refusing to comply with civic planning. And, at the center of it all, Marlene Clay. Elegant, composed, smiling in every photo. She gave statements to local outlets, painting herself as the voice of reason. "We're simply trying to bring order and shared prosperity to Crestwood Pines. Mr. Blake's refusal to participate in collective efforts is regrettable, but not surprising given his combative attitude." They even dug into his past, highlighting old news clippings of a warehouse fire gone wrong, where Ethan had been falsely blamed for a miscommunication that led to a civilian injury. Though he was cleared, the stain resurfaced. Then came the anonymous letters, slipped under his gate. "Retire in peace, old man, or let someone else bring progress. Your wife would be ashamed." That one cut deepest. Layla tried to contain the damage. She issued a press statement, sent cease and desist letters. But Marlene had money and, worse, she had narrative. She hired a PR firm, staged photo ops at nearby parks, with kids holding signs like, "Pools for people, not for profit." Crestwood voices fractured. Some members, afraid for their reputations or businesses, backed away. Meetings shrank. Invitations went unanswered. And Ethan, who had once stood tall against fire, felt himself burning from the inside out. Late one night, he sat on the edge of his now empty pool. The silence was heavier than usual. "This is bigger than me," he said softly. "And maybe too big to fight." Layla sat beside him. "You said that once, remember? When we filed the injunction. But look how far we've come." He looked at her, hollow-eyed. "Yeah, but what if it's not far enough?" Ethan didn't hear the knock at first. He was too deep in his own silence, replaying every word from the smear campaign in his mind. Like static, he couldn't switch off. Then another knock, firmer. He opened the door to see a man in his late 50s, wearing a faded polo with an old evergreen HOA crest. Not the new glossy kind, the original design, worn by people who remembered when this all began. Victor Tran, former treasurer, resigned 2 years ago without explanation. "I saw the site," Victor said quietly. "The one where they're dragging your name. I couldn't stay quiet anymore." Inside, over black coffee, Victor unfolded the truth. "Marlene doesn't care about community," he said. By the end of the hearing, the town board had voted unanimously. Evergreen Lakes Civic Authority was to be dissolved, effective immediately. Its officers, including Marlene, were to be formally investigated for fraud, conspiracy, and attempted land theft. The old county clerk who notarized the fake documents was arrested for aiding in the falsification of government records. As Ethan walked out into the evening light, someone from the crowd shouted, "Thank you, Ethan!" Snapped into place. Why the HOA had no legal standing, why the forged documents existed, and why Ethan was public enemy number one. Layla moved fast. With Victor's sworn statement, she gathered every piece of evidence: fake seals, drone footage, threatening letters. Then, Ethan did something unexpected. He went live. In front of his pool, with nothing rehearsed, he turned on his phone and spoke. He told the truth. About the lies, about the land, about his wife. "They came for my pool, but they were after something more, something that belongs to all of us. The right to say no." The video hit 5,000 views in under an hour. By midnight, it reached 50,000. And the morning after, it landed in the inbox of a state attorney general. The storm didn't break with thunder. It arrived in the form of subpoenas. Within 72 hours of Ethan's livestream going viral, officials from the Colorado State Attorney General's office arrived in Crestwood Pines. Accompanied by county clerks and fraud investigators, they marched into the Evergreen Lakes Civic Authority's rented office suite with clipboards, warrants, and silent determination. Marlene Clay was nowhere to be found. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Ethan hosted the first official Pool for All by Choice block party. Dozens of neighbors came. Kids played in the water. Elderly couples sipped lemonade under string lights. Families brought dishes with handwritten recipes taped to the sides. Laughter returned to Crestwood Pines, no longer forced or nervous, but free. Near the end of the night, Ethan walked over to the newly repainted front gate. A small plaque gleamed under the porch light. It read, "Private property. Open heart. Don't confuse the two." One of the newer residents, a young dad pushing a stroller, stopped and smiled. "That yours?" he asked. Ethan nodded. The man paused. "Hope you don't mind if I steal that line someday," Ethan chuckled. "Only if you mean it." As music drifted in from the backyard and stars began to prick the sky, Ethan took a deep breath. Marlene tried to turn us against each other, and we let her. But no one gets to claim what they didn't earn. Not my pool, not your property, not this town. There was no applause, just a long, resonant stillness, the kind that comes before real change. Then, Victor Tran, flanked by two former HOA members, stepped up to testify under oath. Documents were submitted. Photos of sealed-off land, email records connecting Marlene to Clear Front Holdings, forged notary logs.